service members of Reddit. What is your worst military wife story? Standing gate guard in Washington DC. Officer's wife drives through the gate and presents her ID. I wave her through. She doesn't move. Asking me if I forgot something. I said no. I didn't believe I did. She said I forgot to salute her, pointing to the blue sticker on her windshield. I leaned close to her windshield and saluted the sticker, wishing it a good afternoon. I got removed from that duty. Repeat after me. You are not your husband's rank. Saw a newer airman with no belt on. I asked, why don't you have a belt? He said he can't afford one, so I give him $5 and tell him to go get a belt. A few weeks later I see him at Ruby Tuesday cleaning tables. I ask around and apparently his wife was growing weed in base housing and he got kicked out of the military. He swore he didn't know what she was doing. Got back from an 8-month deployment. Buddy's wife was 6 months pregnant. FedEx is amazing. Really? Edit. Thanks for the metal. Stranger. A friend of mine came home one day early from a year-long deployment. Wife was busy f***ing another guy on the couch. In the bedroom was a baby she had never mentioned, fathered by yet a third guy. I got restationed back in the States from Germany. I flew my German girlfriend over and we ended up getting married. She went back to Germany 4 days later and I never saw her again. Oh. I'm gonna post some of my friend's highlights. She was the midwife on an Air Force base. Delivered lots of babies. Colonel brought his 16-year-old daughter in because she was pregnant. Turns out the father was a new junior enlisted. He did not last long in the military. Dude's wife left him and moved in with her boyfriend off base while he was deployed. She got knocked up. Since they were still married, she was still going to the base for medical care. Their divorce wasn't final by her due date, so she still got to go on base and deliver. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, the military guy, had his buddies and security forces put a security flag on his soon-to-be ex-wife's boyfriend. The boyfriend couldn't be on base for the birth of his child. And always the favorite. Babies coming out with the wrong ethnic background of the father was at least a once-a-year thing. The issue is that people forget the military is filled with 18-20-year-old boys, many of whom lacked relationship experience, and marry the first girl who gives them attention. Posting on behalf of my husband. Worst, they came back from a 15-month tour in Iraq. His platoon sergeant went home to find another man living in his house with his wife and kids. His kids, toddlers, were calling the guy daddy. When he walked in, his wife basically said, "Yay. I want a divorce. I'm with him now." Full stop. Worst part was the platoon sergeant and new daddy, kinda, worked together, but was one of the few who stay behind for clerical stuff while the rest deployed. Yes. I know this is absolutely against the rules. This was when SHT was the Wild West and a DUI was an unofficial requirement for E6. Later, I asked my husband what happened after this. He doesn't know what happened to Jodi, a deployment replacement daddy. The husband threatened to take the kids and kick her onto the street, which he definitely had grounds to do. Instead, she agreed to on-demand sex and threesomes, including summoning a prostitute if he wanted one and helping him keep it on the DL. While delivering our 4th baby at a military hospital, we were talking to one of the nurses about infidelity and crazy things she had witnessed. She told us about a woman coming in with her husband for a C-section that was not scheduled. The woman insisted that she was scheduled for a C-section that day. They did an ultrasound and found that she was 3 months pregnant, not 9 months pregnant. She was willing to deliver a baby 6 months early so it would appear the conception lined up with her husband's mid-tour leave. Deliver a baby 6 months early. Q. What's the difference between a 12-week delivery by C-section and a medical abortion? A. The C-section takes longer to recover from and is more likely to cause physical complications. Oh man, so many. One friend in the Corps, a first-term sergeant who hated every minute he was in uniform. He re-enlisted so she could go to school. Left for deployment after re-enlistment. Came back to a divorce and a drained bank account. Had another sergeant who met his wife while he and like 7 other guys were running a gangbang on her. He decided he needed to marry her. So many shitty stories there. But I mean he probably deserved them. Cause I mean wow. How did you two meet? Well, it was a magical night and I was the 5th guy to dick her down that night and thought, I need to get to know this woman better. She could be the one. One evening while I was on staff duty, my then wife decided that I was cheating on her and not. In fact, at work, I was totally at work. Nor had I ever cheated on her, so she texts me and says I'm going to go to the barracks and FCK the first soldier I see. I was so checked out of the relationship at this point I was just waiting to get out to leave her, so I didn't bother responding. She showed up at the barracks and got turned away by CQ because she used her dependent ID to try to check into the barracks. And couldn't tell them who she was there to visit. Heard one not long ago about a lieutenant's wife who copped an attitude when informed that her husband did not qualify her for general officer only parking. Dude in my platoon's wife falsely accused her ex-MP boyfriend of rape. Went as far as stabbing a mattress and swallowing condom to set him up. Dude spends weeks in jail before being cleared of all charges. When it comes to light, it was crazy lady vindictive bullshit. She amped up the crazy. She handed her friend her and my platoon mate's baby through a window at night while they watched a movie. Platoon mate went to check on the baby and it was missing. Prompted the first Amber Alert in Alaska history. She tried to pin it on the MP as some sort of act of vengeance. I can only imagine what the poor dude was thinking when the cops came to him with this. He was very quickly eliminated as subject and they figured out that the baby was safe rather quickly. Long story short. Someone, A, in my unit walked in on his wife cheating on him with someone else, B, from our unit. They separate. She moves in with B and leaves the unit. 8 months later, we return from a deployment. And A goes on one date with a girl. His ex-wife finds out and calls the 1STSGT. A gets charged with adultery and reduced in rank while B only got switched to a different unit. Hope this counts. My grandfather was stationed in Germany where he met my grandmother. They got married in Germany and she moved back to the States with him. Where his family was absolutely not very happy about it. His mother actually offered to buy him a brand new car if she married a nice American woman instead. Obviously my grandma wasn't too happy about that and decided the best course of action was to have a second wedding in the US to prove she wasn't going anywhere. They were married 55 years and she's still living in the original family home. My brother-in-law was on both sides of shitty cheating stories. He married a woman he chatted to online for a few weeks when he was 19. Then he had to go to Iraq. A month after he left, she told him that he got her pregnant. He comes home after 6 months, then she has the baby. The baby definitely is not his. Fast forward 10 years. He's married to an awesome chick we all like. She works a job and takes care of everything around the house. He cheats on her with her 18-year-old girl that worked at Sonic. She catches him and leaves for a weekend to go stay with her sister to figure out what to do. He puts all her stuff in cardboard boxes out under the carport and moves in the new girl. He really is a piece of shitty. I was pretty naive and got maneuvered into a couple of shitty situations. First, somehow ended up alone with colleague's wife. She starts telling SI stories. And getting closer and closer to me. Tells me something like, nobody gives better blowjobs than me. It made sense in conversation. But also wasn't really necessary. My somewhat intoxicated response. Okay. Then. Good night. I'll be leaving now. Second. Was drinking with a different colleague. He got very intoxicated. And. Out of the blue. Starting berating me for trying to sleep with his wife. I did not want to sleep with his wife. And was not trying to. Noped out of there. 2. Later that night. Wife showed up at my apartment. Ostensibly to apologize. Heard some other rumors. but was never sure what to believe. I knew a guy who got home from sea a day early back when there was no email or phones to call home and let wives know they were in early. Found a different car in his driveway and someone else in his wife. He kicked his wife naked out on the front lawn and then proceeded to beat 7 levels of hell out of the guy. He spent 2 months in club ed for assault, but he said it was worth it. My best mate in the army married a girl he just met and then deployed. While he was gone, she kept begging him for money to buy everything that they needed to set up house when he got back. When his tour ended, the girl was genuinely pissed and wanted to know how soon he was deploying again. After some days of heated discussion, it turned out that she expected he would die in combat and told him that her family and her boyfriend were counting on the money. He was an aircraft tech and never left the airport. He threw her out and told her they were getting divorced, and she offered up her sister as a replacement. Not a service member, but my uncle is and co. His first wife cheated on him with a colonel's wife. He found them in a very SZUL situation in his own house. So he did what he had to, and he yeeted them naked out of the house for all the other people living in the military houses to see, including the colonel. Got a divorce. Full custody of kids. So, I was Air National Guard for 9 years. There was a girl who enlisted about the same time I did. In those 9 years before I got out, she had been married and divorced 3 times. She wasn't even 30. I believe her marriages went Marine, Navy, Army. Her rationale each time was that it was the guy's fault. If someone keeps picking a rotten apple and taking a bite, you don't blame the apple. Next in the Avatar cycle is the Air Force. I once pulled over the same lady on 3 separate occasions for speeding in a school zone. I was trying to be nice the first 2 times and let her off the hook, but she started bawling the 3rd time and I lost my patience. She kept sobbing, saying her husband was deployed. I let her keep doing this for a couple minutes while I was writing everything she said in my notes. It felt like a hot fuzz moment. I finally asked how her husband being deployed was relevant to her speeding in a school zone, and then she just stared at me like she couldn't believe I would question it. She got quiet afterwards and I handed her the ticket and walked away without saying anything else. Not me, thank God. Had a SGT in Korea marry a downrange hooker. Yo, I have no idea either. It was so FK'd up seeing her at formal military functions. All of us in class A's and her dressing like Peggy Bundy. Bonus story. Her name was Tiger. This SGT had a guy in his squad that hated him, so at 5 PM he would hightail it downrange and get a blowjob from Tiger, then just wait until the SGT showed up to kiss his girl. On my last deployment I re-upped for 3 more and got a $35,000 bonus. Since I was overseas it was non-taxable income. After coming home I learned I had stage 3 colon cancer. 3 days after my last chemo treatment she told me she had been F-king around the whole time. Drained all of my pay, the bonus, and sold my truck. She was a therapist. This isn't my story and it happened at a fire station, so if this doesn't meet the criteria I apologize. There's a firefighter who used to pay another firefighter for work for him, so that FFA could go home for the day and have sex with FFB's wife. Afterwards she would give him the money that he would then use to pay FFB to work for him again. Well, I was in the Navy. My husband was a civilian. We married young like all service members do at 19. We grew up in the same city and dated for several years. I thought I knew the guy inside and out. He had some anger issues but nothing out of the ordinary for a 19-year-old dude. I deployed to Afghanistan almost immediately and that's when things changed. Some other base wife told him that I was F-king dudes in porta potties, which I was not. He started doing heroin at some point. Started selling drugs to base wives. Absolutely trashed my house. He sold everything and drained my account. Thousands of dollars in deployment money gone. He left base never to return. My 2 dogs were left in the house. Did more and more damage. And were taken to the Humane Society where I paid hundreds to get them back. He hung out with a Japanese girl off base until my return. They got pregnant. Then he started to follow me and threaten me. Anyways, we got divorced and his psycho mother continued to threaten me for several years. Overall, very fun experience. Would rate 4/10. I was deployed to Iraq and had a fiancée at the time. She called off the engagement because she said I was too controlling. It turns out that not wanting her to go to bars and dance topless is considered controlling. I later found out she was already sleeping with another soldier from another unit. Probably wouldn't have been a happy marriage anyways. I was in with a guy that proposed to a girl back home that he barely knew. He bought her a car that she complained about but still accepted. He doesn't even have a car and asks for rides everywhere. He got her an apartment back in their hometown and pays her rent. He sends her his entire paycheck to her to help her take care of her son and get anything else she needs. He would tell me fishy things about her that made it obvious she was cheating. Out of nowhere she gets pregnant and stops talking to him completely. I tell him to get a DNA and he refused. Of course, a couple months later the baby is born and looks nothing like him. He gets the test and it's not his daughter. He later found out the baby was by the first kid's basketball coach. The coach tells my friend he's a good father and I'm gonna fall back and let you raise her. My friend is still with her to this day and she refuses to marry him. When I was stationed in Germany, my best friend was having an affair with his boss's wife. They wound up coming back to the US and getting married. And my boss's wife, who was friends with her, started coming onto me. I eventually had to do a "it's not you, it's me" thing to discourage her. Sergeant was at a party with a couple lower enlisted they had been friends with for years. SGT got hammered. And poor PVT's wife took advantage of that. And the other 3 guys in the room, they're still married. Happened in 2004 when we got back from the Iraq invasion and such. We had just hit Bangor, Maine and some vets had cell phones that were donated for us to call and tell our loved ones that we were just hours from reunion. This sergeant called his wife. Whole deployment no issues. All is good. Or so he thought. We hear a string of cursing like only an infantryman could in this cell go flying like a scud across the terminal. So apparently she decided to wait until he was just a few hours from home after a year of combat to say she was divorcing him. She had left him negative a few hundred in the bank account. What she didn't throw out was now in a couple of trash bags in his truck. TTY old beater, unsecure, unlocked in the barracks parking lot. He was remarried within 2 months. There were no classy winners or losers in this story. No animals were harmed and no coat hangers bloodied. Not a member of the armed services. But I knew this soldier whose wife cheated on him over a dozen times while he was stationed overseas. Edit: I didn't like his wife and avoided her like the plague. Didn't find out about what she'd done until after he divorced her ass. When my mother-in-law gave birth to my now wife, she was advised to make a sandwich or 2 in case her husband got hungry while she was delivering her child. Her husband did not attend the delivery, so all she had in the delivery room was a drill sergeant yelling at her to push. When she got home, the father had his car engine disassembled on the table. He asked whether she'd had a boy or girl. Got told girl. Said oh and went back to his engine. He really wanted a boy to carry on the family name. But when, in an attempt to save the relationship, they had a boy together, he moved out shortly afterward and never, or rarely, spoke to the son again. The son changed his last name to his mother's name as soon as he legally could. I was in an E-club in San Diego one time. An announcement came over the speakers in the club saying that the USS blah blah was immediately returning to port. The whole club empties out. On my first deployment we had a comb guy that was dumber than a bag of hammers. His wife wasn't much brighter. We didn't have any steady communication with back home, so the days we had phones or internet access were always a big deal. Well, one of those phone days he came in all excited saying that his wife told him she was 3 months pregnant 4 months into the deployment. He did his rounds of telling everyone all excited, and I don't think anyone had the heart to tell him to think about the math. We get back from deployment and when his son was born he came out looking a little different than what everyone expected. His wife was Mexican, so I guess that was enough to convince him that everything was okay.